Hello, I'm Ronnie Eldridge. Welcome to Eldridge and Company. Last summer, Staten Island, New York City's smallest borough, was thrown into the national debate about race and relations between the police and the African American community. Debbie Rose, a member of the City Council, represents the district where Eric Gardner's arrest and death occurred, and she's my guest today. Welcome.
Hi, Ronnie. How are you?
Staten Island is, I think, a mystery or a myth to many of us, you know? I mean, it's an island. I always used to think it was like the island, like Sausalito off of San Francisco, but it ain't, right?
It's not, no.
No. Tell me about it. Is it as divided between the North and the South as some people say?
You know, Staten Island is really like an enigma. It's a wonderful sort of suburban environment, yet it is urban. And they're distinguished by the boundary line, which is the Staten Island Expressway, and the north and south. You really get a feel for urban New York City in the North Shore with the diversity, transportation, the schools, and then on the other side, it's more like what is perceived when you think about Staten Island as a bedroom community, and the divide is very obvious sometimes.
When you get off the ferry, what are you in, the North or the South?
When you get off the ferry, you're in the North Shore, which is my district.
Right, and that's what's so misleading, I think. We think of that as being the South Shore and then the North Shore.
Right, no, yeah. And the ferry is actually the gateway to Staten Island. The expressway it takes people through Staten Island, and you never really get to see it. Whereas when you get off the ferry, you have access to many of the cultural are in the North Shore, and the seat of government is right there at the ferry terminal. And now we are so excited about the development on our waterfront. We will now have over $580 million investment on our waterfront, which includes the New York Wheel, which will be the tallest wheel in the world. It's much like the London Eye or the Singapore Flyer, but it will be...
And you ride it. It's a ride for people?
Yes, it's actually sort of an observation wheel where there are capsules, and each capsule can hold up to about 35 to 40 people.
So it's like a tram.
And, yes, and it takes almost an hour to rotate. So you'll be able to see all the vistas and the views of New York City, New Jersey, and Brooklyn. You'll be able, and Staten Island, of course.
So you're going to be a rival to the World Trade Center.
So we're going to actually be a tourist destination for the first time. We have the iconic Staten Island Ferry, where people ride it all the time, but they usually get off, turn right around, and go back to Manhattan. Now we will have an actual destination for them to come to. In addition, we're going to have New York City's only outlet mall where high-end outlets will be located, as well as restaurants and a hotel. And so you won't have to go to Woodbury Commons anymore. People will now make Staten Island a shopping
So this is a lot of
destination.
Jobs. A lot of jobs.
And we're talking over 3,000 jobs. We're talking pre-construction jobs, construction jobs, and post, which are the most important to the people in my district. During the negotiations, I was able to get that job to be 100% union, so that the union workers will now have a project that's on Staten Island. And in fact, we also requested that Staten Islanders have first choice for the jobs. Yeah. And then after, the outlets are going to hire, again, union help for the retail, from entry-level retail to supervisory, a full range, as well as the wheel, so that we're talking about not just entry-level, low-paying jobs. We're talking about good-paying jobs with a future, sort of career ladder jobs on our waterfront.
Different developers for the
Yes, we have 2 developers. Rich Marin is overseeing the development of the New York Wheel, and Don Kaposha, BFC, is the contractors for the.
And they have other malls that they've done.
In fact, BFC is in affordable housing usually.
Oh.
So I do believe this might be their first mall
That's
project. Whereas Rich Marin is, I don't believe this is their first wheel.
Do you have a lot of affordable housing on the island?
We don't have a lot of affordable housing. We have, in my district, I have 5 NYCHA developments, and we have mixed income. So all of the development that's coming to Staten Island now, we've talked about having a mix of low, middle, and upper, so that we're not creating niches or ghettos of one economic class. We're dividing it out so that, yes, we're increasing our affordable housing
On the North Shore as
on
well.
the North Shore, as well as our housing stock.
When you get off the bridge,
Yes,
what do you go on? Is that
that's the Staten Island Expressway.
that's the expressway? Okay.
Yes, and
Right.
and it's riddled with potholes. We were able to, all of the elected officials, we put a lot of money and time into getting the Staten Island Expressway where it is now at least safe, and the potholes have been fixed. And and one of the big issues for Staten Islanders is the bridge. The bridge.
How much does it cost?
$16
Round
for round trip for non-residents. If you are a resident and you get an Easy Pass and a sticker, we do have the advantage of a discounted fare.
So what is that?
But, and it's about $6.50.
I've always been amazed that people have to pay. Now, I'm using New Jersey. They have to pay to go from New Jersey to New York. It just doesn't make sense to me. There's the United States,
Well,
and
how
these are
do you
states.
think
Then
we
how do you
feel
I can't imagine how
that
you feel.
We cannot get off of Staten Island
Yeah.
by car
Right.
without
Without
paying.
But you
sum
pay
total.
taxes. You pay property taxes. It makes
We're
sense.
the only borough, and we're an island, we're the only borough that
And it's an
doesn't
MTA.
have free access by car. But the ferry is still free.
Yeah.
But and a
everybody.
long time ago, before 9/11,
You could take the car on the ferry.
you could take your car, and now it's only for.
And the bridge is operated by
pedestrians.
the MTA.
It's the MTA.
It's incredible
And
to me.
you know,
Yeah.
we are.
Is that why people?
We're in the middle of a fight with the MTA because we've suffered reduced services on our bus line. As you know, we have no subway on Staten Island, so buses are our only way of getting around. In addition to, we have the Staten Island Rapid Transit, which serves mostly the South Shore. There's only 2 stops in my district. And so we've been fighting with the MTA to get the bus right-of-way along the North Shore. Years ago, we had a passenger line, which sort of bit the dust, and it became a freight line. And so there are still, the right-of-way is still there. So we've been fighting. I personally would like to see light rail or a monorail around the North Shore,
And on the
connected
bridge.
to the West Shore.
How about it with the bridge?
It would be great. We're trying to link the Bayonne Bridge, rail across the Bayonne Bridge that would meet with the Hudson Rail that's right there, would take people right to the path line, right into Manhattan. So there would be an option for, especially the people who are coming from the South Shore and the West Shore. It would be a direct link, and they could get into Manhattan without having to go all the way to St. George to the ferry.
So now let's go back.
Okay.
it's not only the smallest borough, it's the whitest borough.
It is in terms of population, but we're very diverse, especially in my district.
Well, that's the line, isn't it?
Yes.
Some people
yes.
say it's like the Mason-Dixon
Yes.
line.
Yes, and it is, it's well documented among Staten Islanders that there is a division. In my district, we have the most diverse district, and we have the largest Liberian population outside of Liberia. We have the largest Sri Lankan community outside of Sri Lanka. And our numbers are, in terms of our immigrant populations, are growing. And so, yes, it is. There's a very distinct difference in
Has the recent
districts.
Garner incident, I don't like to call it that because it's more important, has that exasperated the difference?
The Garner incident has unfortunately exasperated race relations, not only on Staten Island, but throughout the United States. With Ferguson and Garner, attention has been turned to disparate policing in different communities. And right now, people have decided that there needs to be a change. There needs to be a change. And it's very distressing to me that people are looking at what happened with the Garner incident and turning this into a race issue. It's an issue about overly aggressive policing that went bad. It's an issue where the community feels that there needs to be a change. And how do you, I am really upset about the fact that people have turned this into an anti-police issue when it is only about anti-bad police. In my whole mission in this thing is to see that the bad actors, and only the bad actors, are held accountable. In the Garner incident, the officer that was a part of the Garner incident had multiple complaints about how he was policing. Overreacting, aggressive policing. This should have, at some point, been looked at. And maybe he needed to be taken off of the street, retrained, and then allowed to resume. But the fact that he's been a repeat offender, it's where does the police accountability come in? In any occupation or profession or job, when there are incidents, repeated incidents of misconduct or questionable or not following procedure, there's an accountability that comes into play.
Police incidents against white people also on Staten Island.
Oh, absolutely. I've heard from a number of people who have said to me, friends of mine, white people who have said, I have to tell my child how to respond when they are stopped by a police officer. My son has been stopped by a police officer because, they feel without cause. So it really is.
It's such a complicated issue. It's so many different levels, isn't it? There are a lot of police living on Staten Island.
And that's one of the reasons why, for the most part, we have the largest number of police officers living on Staten Island, and many of them live in the South Shore, in other districts. Although on the North Shore, I have quite a few. The Staten Island is really a blue-collar civil service. borough.
Yeah.
We have a large number of firemen and policemen and correction officers, law enforcement. And so,
Do you think that the Garner thing was also a comment on the advisability of the broken window strategy?
you know, I believe that the broken windows, and I'm probably one of a few that what has happened with that is that it's been linked to ComStat. It's been linked to quotas. It productivity quotas. The police department officers have some sort of productivity, and it became an easy way to meet that productivity
Interesting.
quota. So you stop a number of people for low-level nuisance crimes or incidents. Like with the Eric Garner incident, everybody knows that the stores in the community also sells loose cigarettes.
Lucy.
And if,
That's
in
interesting.
fact, they were approached, they would be given a summons.
It's interesting.
And so people, are looking at the disparity
Yeah.
of
And
how
the severity
that
of the whole
evolved.
thing.
Yeah.
Do you, you were the first African American ever elected to office from Staten Island?
From Staten Island, ever. Not even a dog catcher. And
It was,
you-
it was hard work.
I ran 3 times. I was told that it was not my time, that it might never be my time. And that's when I really
Did the Democratic
got seriously.
organization say that to you? I mean, it's so weak.
Yeah.
They haven't done a very good job at
didn't
producing
have
candidates.
any support from anywhere except for the community.
Yeah,
I had been on the
that's the way to
community
run.
board for 28 years. So I knew the issues in
Yeah.
all of the North Shore communities. And I was tired of being on the community board and only having an advisory voice.
Yeah.
I wanted to get
Yeah.
to city council where we could actually do
So
something.
do you now,
But I just want to say this, Ronnie, about being the first African American elected. It's a very difficult job because I am the councilwoman for everyone. And I had to establish that because people's fears were, because I am the first African American ever elected, that I would only represent the African American community or the communities of color. And so my job was to, prove to them, I knew that I was elected to represent everyone, but I had to, prove to
Yeah.
everyone
it's a hard
that,
job. Yeah.
that I'm a native Staten Islander, and my love is Staten Island. I lived on the North Shore all my life.
When you grew up, did you feel any discrimination?
In the North Shore we had mixed communities, but like I say to everyone, every day of my life, something and someone reminds me that I am an African American.
Is that right?
Every day of my life, and it's not always bad. It's not.
I'm doing
It's
it
something
now.
that you learn.
I'm doing
you
it
learn
right
to,
now, right?
You learn to live with
Yeah.
it. It's just the reality for people of color.
So you were comfortable then growing up there?
I was very comfortable growing up. My dad was a civil servant. He was a correction officer, and my mom worked for Allstate. And we owned our own home, and we were able to live in communities that were diverse and good. Now, that's not to say that there have not been incidents,
Right,
that we didn't see it in school, that there were times when people of color have tried to move out of certain communities and were met with all types of hatred incidents, fires,
Yeah.
but
But you grew up strong.
it made me strong.
Right. And yeah.
And it made me able to to navigate
Yeah.
a world that, is very complicated.
Let's talk about current politics.
Yeah.
There is a move in the courts to get the record of the grand jury published. And the district attorney of Staten Island, of course, is key because the public doesn't even know what charges he brought, right, to the jury.
Exactly.
And now it is rumored that he's going to run for Congress. So that's a complication, right? And then you have the election of a guy who was charged with felonies and who said he was innocent, got reelected, and then disappears. And now it's obvious that he ran so he could minimize, I think, his sentence, don't you think?
Yes.
But he doesn't have to pay for the new election, does he?
No.
Financially?
No, he doesn't.
Yeah.
And the people who are staunch supporters of our congressman who is now, has to leave office, are always talking about fiscal accountability.
Yes.
And now we have to go through another election. As we speak right now, at the Supreme Court, they're having a hearing about whether or not to open the grand jury records. I think it would be very, elucidating to see what and how that process played out. Because people understood that there was a process, and they were willing to wait and be patient about that. But what happened within that process that worked out, that we came out with no indictment, no true bill, is really, a quagmire. People are really concerned about how did we arrive there.
How did this happen?
We all saw the video ad nauseum, and yet we were told that it really wasn't pretty much what we saw. So we have the grand jury, and we don't know what charges were brought, and also why did the DA decide to give everybody else immunity when there was more than one bad actor on the scene.
You're talking about the people, the other police officers.
They gave all of the police officers and the EMS. Immunity, and just targeted the one officer when there were numerous folks there who had some culpability in what transpired. So so it would be interesting to see why and how that came about, and then also to see what charges.
Right.
Because everyone believed, at least I believed, I had held out some hope that the minimal charge, at least, would have been given, and then there would be a day in court, and the officer and the public and the family would have the ability to have the process actually play out. So, but it's not the end of the line. As you know, there are departmental charges, a departmental investigation that's going on now, as well as the U.S. Attorney, and on the city council level, we too are now looking at the hearings that we can have, and also the fact that we, during the Community Safety Acts, one of the things that we were able to get was an inspector general. We've now asked the inspector general to do what, in fact, he's to do, which is to sort of to monitor and to assess police policies and look into. For me, the most important thing is accountability. So look into accountability. What happens when there are officers who are repeat offenders or are bad actors? Where's the accountability? How do we handle that? And so the city council has asked them to the IG to look into that aspect of it. There's also legislation that's being talked about on the state level, because city, we can't do anything with the penal law, but in terms of the grand jury, and if in fact, because of the relationship with the police department and the DA is symbiotic, the DA needs the police department to make his cases. So for him to turn around and to be forced to prosecute police officers is really tough.
So you'd like to separate that whole...
So now we're looking like, when that happens, that there should be a special prosecutor
for members of the police.
Just that.
Yeah.
So that there is no appearance of a conflict, and it doesn't put, you know, the onus on the DA to sort of impugn a process that he really depends on, to do his job.
So he must be fighting the opening of these hearings if he wants to run.
I haven't heard from him since they brought this suit to have it open, but I'm sure he's not happy to,
Staten Island is very lucky to have you, I want to say, and I'm so glad you tried 3 times.
3 times.
And I hope that you will hold public office, and I wish that you would run for the Congress, although they shouldn't leave such a wonderful champion.
Some people have said that to me, but I really love city government. I think that's where I can be
it's where
most
you live,
useful.
Right? You live right in there.
And it's the bread and butter issues that affect everyone. And I really do think that I can effectuate the quality of life on the city level much more so than going to Washington and gridlock.
Thank you. We've come to the end. So thank you so much, Councilwoman Debbie Rose.
Thank you, Ronnie. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. If there are any people you'd like to hear and topics you'd like us to explore, please let me know. You can write to me at CUNY TV, 365 Fifth Avenue, New York, New York, 10016, or you can go to the website at cuny.tv and click on Contact Us. I look forward to hearing from you.